Hello friends. So once again a very warm welcome. This is Ishant on behalf of Edureka. So it's been a pretty good time that I am associated with Edureka and I am doing the sessions with Java and Android. So we're gonna discuss something known as Android for the day, and it's gonna be a basics, and then we'll be moving on to one component of Android known as activity and its life cycle, and thereafter we'll see how we can manage some layouts in Android. So guys, let's see what and all we're gonna come up today with. So we will see a very basic history of Android, so how it evolved, then we'll see introduction to Android. We'll understand the anatomy and physiology about Android. So we're gonna discuss architecture, the features. We'll see if you write an application, so how Android runtime treats it. Then we got the installation procedures, activity lifecycle. So guys, when you talk of Android, so activity is one of the user interfaces in Android, and we'll see how exactly activities lifecycle is handled by Android. We'll also see the layout and the manifest file and the demonstration on all these concepts mentioned out here, guys. Let's start. So in the evolution of Android, we got the alpha version as the primary version, then we got the beta, and then so on and so forth, guys, right? So 1.0, 1.1, and if you can see, so all the versions of Android, so they are quite confectionery themed names, and that in an alphabetic arrangement, right? So you got alpha, beta, cupcake, donut, eclair, frio, gingerbread, right? So I started working in Android in the eclair version. So out here, that's like 2.0, and I worked with Samsung R&D, and I did work on Galaxy S2 out here on eclair. So guys, till your gingerbread, Android was only available for smartphones, but from Honeycomb onwards, so we got Android portable in the tablets even. So Honeycomb was specifically designed for tablets, and thereafter all the versions they started supporting mobile phones as well as the tablets. So you got ice cream sandwich, jelly bean, Kit Kat, lollipop, marshmallow, and nougat as of now, right? So we got the O preview is something which is supposed to be out in the market soon. So let's now proceed towards the introduction towards the Android. So guys, Android is an embedded operating system. So it's an operating system for embedded devices and backed up by Google, right? So to be precise, it is more or less used in the mobile domain, right? So we say it's a mobile operating system, but to very extent, it's an operating system which can be installed in any of the embedded devices, right? So you could have seen Android near you. So Android is in television, Android is in smartphones, Android is in watches, it's in the printers, it's in the infotainment system of the vehicles, right? So Android is basically an operating system for embedded devices backed by Google. Now Android's kernel is based on the Linux kernel. So it's like LTA's long-term support branches. Other than that, specifically, this is for touchscreen devices. So when we got the interface, as in the touch interface, we got this Android OS as one of the most hot and happening OS in the world somehow. So guys, what is the anatomy and physiology of this guy Android, right? So what's the architecture of Android? So we got Linux kernel as the lowest layer, right? If you can see, as discussed, so Android is based on Linux. So now Android is a layered architecture. So we got layers in the architecture of the Android, and these layers, they're gonna interact with each other. So the lowest layer is the kernel layer, which is basically a hardware layer. It's a layer which is going to interact with the hardware, right? So here we have drivers, for example, display driver, camera driver, flash driver, and IPC binder, right? So this guy is going to manage the power. So guys, let's say the phone's battery is low, so this kernel layer is gonna detect that status, right? Above the Linux kernel, we got the libraries which are written in C++. So kernel is all in C, right? And the libraries are written in C++. For example, media framework, having awesome player which will play the media files, for example, your audio files. Then we got SQLite, which is the lighter version of the relational database management system. We got OpenGL and Surface Manager managing the graphics part. Then we got runtime of the Android as in the DVM. So the way you got JVM in Java, in a similar way we got DVM, that's like Dalvik virtual machine in Android. So the runtime of Android is based on Dalvik virtual machine and the core libraries from Java itself, right? On top of libraries, we got application framework. So guys, application framework is written in Java, right? So this framework layer is in Java, and if you can see, So on top of application framework, again got applications. So applications are also written in Java now. We can use activity from the application framework to create the user interfaces in our application. We can use content provider in our application. So guys, out here, so we got Dalvik virtual machine versus the Java virtual machine, right? So in Java we got JVM and in Android we got DVM. So Dalvik virtual machine out here is an optimized version for JVM. So what happens out in Java? So we got the bytecode, and here we got something known as DEX code, which is a more secure and an optimized form of a intermediate code, right? So we'll discuss the same in our upcoming slides. So let's see what are the various features of Android, right? So let's try to see features. Android is an open source operating system. It means that the companies, they can use the source code and they can customize their own features and they can come up with their different operating system. For example, the Cyanogen. Other than that, what Samsung, Sony or other companies will do, right? So they're gonna take up the code and they're gonna put their features on top of the Android source code and they're gonna customize it and they're gonna sell it. Now a lot of apps can be developed on top of Android, right? We got various revolution in the field of application development because of Android. We got applications like WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, etc., right? So these are some basic applications. So talking about the apps like Slack, which can manage the business event, right? So all these applications, from very simple problem solving to a very major and a complex problem solving, for example, Ola and Uber. So apps can be developed on top of your operating system like Android. So it can be kind of a startup key idea. So overall complexity is reduced, right? So it's very easy to write applications in Android if you know Java. Then it's like a ready-made, low-cost, high-tech devices solution for it, right? For example, company like Micromax, right? So they need to invest only in hardware, and the software cost is not supposed to be beared by them. They can get the Android, they can port into their hardwares, and they can directly sell it out. So what are the categories of Android? So guys, when we are going to write application, when we are going to develop an application, so the applications can fall in a lot of categories. For example, entertainment can be one category, right? So here we can have applications, for example, some video streamings or any kind of entertainment related applications. We got tools which can manage our businesses. We got productivity, which is going to help and enhance the productivity. We got communication related apps, for example, WhatsApp, correct? Similarly, we got personalization, music and audio, social media and video, travel, right? So a lot of different categories are available over the Google Play Store, where you'll find all these different applications. For instance, nowadays we need not to download the music files or the audio files. What we got Spotify, we got Ghana, we got Savan, which can directly play the music. We can stream the music and it's done for us, right? We just need to have data connectivity and you are done with that part. So guys, now let's try to understand what is Android runtime. So we were trying to understand that there is something known as Dalvik virtual machine in Android, right? So let's try to understand the difference between Dalvik virtual machine and Java virtual machine. So Android runtime is supposed to execute Dalvik bytecode. So guys, Dalvik virtual machine is an optimized JVM, more or less. So it's gonna work for low power processing and low memory environments. So JVM is like for desktops and DVM is like for mobile devices. Now that's like you can say that we got an optimized version of JVM for the devices, for the mobile devices. So unlike JVM, DVM will not run the bytecode. That's like your .class file. It's gonna run the DEX file, which stands for Dalvik executable, right? So source code is compiled to the bytecode. Bytecode is further compiled to the DEX, and DEX code is something which is executed by the Dalvik virtual machine. So guys, what happens in Android? So here, whenever you open any application, an instance of DVM is given to every application. So every application is having an instance of DVM now. So DVM instantiation happens out here when you are going to execute any application. So let's see how we can come up with the installation of Android. So if you want to install and use Android, so guys, the very first thing which we need is JDK. So that's like Java Development Kit. and it is always important to understand the versions. So if you're going to come up with the latest Android Studio, you need to download the latest JDK. And as of now, JDK 8 is the latest version, and you can download it from Oracle. If you can see the link out here, right? So you can download the JDK from this link, guys. Here you are. So make sure that you are going to download your correct OS friendly, versions. For example, you got 32-bit or 64-bit Windows. So let's say this is the 32-bit Windows and this is the 64-bit Windows. So download the JDK as per your bit patterns. All right. So once you are done with the JDK 1.8, you can download the Android Studio. So guys, Android Studio is one official IDE for Android application development, and this is based on IntelliJ IDE, which is from JetBrains. So here's the link from where you can download your Android Studio. It's like developer.android.com, and let's see that. So you got developer.android.com. So guys, this is also one of the great learning portal. So if you are looking forward for any documentation or any kind of support, right, so you can always come up here, right? So it's one of the very great platform. So you can download the Android Studio from here, and yeah, so let's proceed. So after we are done with the environment setting of JDK and Studio is installed in a proper manner, right, next what we can do, we can actually come up with some demonstration now how we can use Android Studio and how we can create a very simple application, right? So we will be now having one small demonstration where we can understand how we can write one Android application. So guys, let's see that. So the first step is to start from a basic Android Studio project out here, if you can see. So we need to say start a new Android Studio project, right? And in an Android Studio project, there is one basic component which is highly required. We call it as an activity, right? So what is an activity? An activity is a user interface in Android, and we need to understand that each and everything in Android which you are able to see as in the entire screen is called as an activity. So guys, Android activity is basically the child of a context theme wrapper class. So this documentation can be explored over the developer.android.com. And now let's try to understand. So Android application development shall have four major components. The first component is the activity. The second component comes up as a service. Then you got broadcast receiver, and then we have content provider. So these are the four major components for developing an Android application. Activity is a user interface, whereas service is a background component, and broadcast receiver can receive the events and then thereafter it can process. Content provider forms the database. Let's take up one example. So if you are going to set up an alarm, you need to open an alarm application. So there will be one user interface where you shall set alarm, right? And this is typically an activity. Now the data gets stored, data is saved, right? Data is saved somewhere. So that is how you got your content provider. Finally, you got your service, which is constantly looking for that time interval to come, right? So service will look for the time interval to come, right? So let's say I got the alarm at 7:00 a.m. So now there is one background service which is constantly monitoring when this time interval will be clicked. So the moment the time interval is clicked, service will send one event. It's going to fire an event, right? And the event handling will be done by this guy known as broadcast receiver, right? So here. Now, when the broadcast receiver will handle the events, at that interval of time, you might get a notification or any pop-up sound, right? Where you can wake up. So guys, we are now going to create an Android application project where we'll be demonstrating activity, right? So as of now, today's agenda will be to demonstrate the activity. Further, this activity out here is one of the most crucial component, because if you're writing an application, you need on a minimum of one activity so that you can present something to your user, right? So let's get on to and let's try to see how we can create an Android application project. So you need to launch an Android Studio, then you start a new Android Studio project out here, right? So once you will create an Android Studio project, you will be getting one complete project structure. So guys, there are two major folders. One is the app folder, one is the Gradle. So app will have all your code which is going to construct your application. For example, we'll have a manifest file out here which is referred to as Android manifest. So here you define all the components of Android. For example, receivers, service, your activity, your provider. So all these components are registered in the manifest file. So Android works on inversion of control principle. So what we do, we configure each and every object in the manifest file. That's like an XML file, and Android system will construct the objects for us. So we don't construct the objects for our classes which we'll create. So the object constructions, it's going to happen as an inversion of control for us. So guys, the Java files will be available in the Java folder, if you can see out there, right? Other than that, we got the RES as in resource directory, where we will be having all of your resources available for your application. For example, some images, some layouts, or some strings coming into the values directory. Now Gradle is a build system where you need to manage your complete application build environment, right? For example, which SDK version you are going to compile your application with, right? And thereafter we got build tools version, we got application ID, minimum SDK version, target SDK version, version code, and version name, right? So all these are the attributes which are linked to your Gradle. So let's now come up and try to create one sample project, and thereafter we'll see how we can explore more of the Android. So let's open Android Studio. So guys, here is the window for your Android Studio, right? So we got this Android Studio coming in. So what I need to do is I just need to start a new Android Studio project out here. So let's say start a new Android Studio project. So before we start a new Android Studio project out here, we must try to understand one component known as activity, right? So let's try to see. So guys, activity is one of the user interfaces in Android. So we say that an activity is a blank frame, right? So the way we got photo frames, so activity is an empty frame. So it's an empty frame more or less. So it's having nothing within it. So it's an empty frame. And this is developed in programming language known as Java, right? So that's like your activity. The second thing which we have is known as layout. So your activities can have layouts. Now what a layout is, so guys, a layout is an arrangement, right? So it's an arrangement. So we got layout. Layouts are typically written in XMLs. You can also write in Java, but this is how you can do it, as in again inversion of control. So you can mention the views in the XML file. So here the layout will have some arrangement of views, how the different views can come up all together, right? For example, the text fields where you're gonna punch in some name or phone or email. So some kind of radio buttons where you're gonna put your gender as in male and female, right? And there you can have one button on click of which you can try to register. So all these views, so what we got over here, we call them as views. So views can be positioned within a layout, right? So layout is an arrangement of how the views will be placed, and this layout is constructed in an XML file. So what we do, we take on to this layout, we get this layout out here and we place it over here, exactly here, if you can see. So finally, your activity will look like the way you have designed your layout. So you're gonna put a photo frame, right? And then you're gonna paste a photo, or you're gonna take a photo into your photo frame, right? So that's how you're gonna do your activity part. So guys, activity is an empty frame, and layout is basically how the views will be positioned within that. And finally, you bring your layout to the activity. So now come back to our Android Studio. So guys, in Android Studio, if you can see, I got one application name out here. So let's try to name this application as activity demo. Let's say it's activity demo. Now the company domain should be written after your project name. So this is the same name which will appear as a label to your application. With the company's domain, you got one reverse arrangement out here as a package name, that's like co.edureka.activitydemo, right? So guys, this is highly important over here, package name, right? So let's see why it is important. It's a reverse order, right? It's a reverse order, and below is your project location. So when I am going to say this package name, where this package name will be, useful, let's see that. So I'm gonna open Google Play Store. So let's see that, and let's search for Edureka. So here we got one application. So guys, if you can see, so this package name acts as a unique identity of your application on Play Store. Let's try to search for some more apps. Let's say Facebook. So here you can see com.facebook.katana, right? So it's like their project name. So Katana is basically the name of the kind of their application, right? You open down the messenger, you can see that it's like com.facebook.orca. So guys, we got your project identifier out here in the Play Store as a unique identity for your application. So it matters a lot, right? So let's say next. In my next part, I got my application to be developed for phone and tablet. In case you want to choose more, you can choose more targets. But here we are going to select one minimum SDK version. So minimum version is the version on which your application will run. So below KitKat, your app will not function, but KitKat and above your app will function, right? So you choose your target as per your requirement. Now, in this next part of our application creation, you can see Java file. So that's like the name of my activity. Other is your layout name. That's like your XML file. So guys, let's see once again. So you got an activity, which is an empty frame, and you got a layout, which is basically your XML file. So you can change the name of your activity if you want. For example, let's say this is activity 1 and the layout name will be automatically modified for you. You want to change the name, you can change the name. Let's try to write A in uppercase. So it's going to give you an error. So resources are supposed to be in lowercase. All right. So make sure that you do that part. And now typically in the end, you need to hit this guy finish. So Gradle will come into action now. So guys, Gradle's gonna build the entire project structure for us. Let's see how the Gradle's gonna, do everything. So it's gonna run some scripts, right? It's gonna configure our project. It's gonna resolve some dependencies here or there. So typically it is done in moments, right? So let's just wait for the Gradle to come up. All right, so here we are. So Gradle has configured one entire project structure for us, right? So this is one tip of the day which will be given by IntelliJ. So this is the IntelliJ, screen. So it's basically an IDE out here. So let's close this tip. So if you want, you can just continue with the tips if you want, right? So below you can see there are multiple processes which are running, right? So after you close the tip, you can see now we got one entire project structure open in front of us. So there are two files which are open in my editor over here. One is the activity1.java. So that's like your activity file. One is activity_1.xml, which is one layout over here. If you can see, it's layout file, which is comprising of a view known as hello world out here, guys, if you can see, correct? So guys, we have this entire project structure, if you can see now. So starting with the folder app, we got manifests. Let's open the manifest. Manifest file is comprising some information regarding your application, right? So let's try to see that. So it says allow backup true. It means that your application should be backed up. You got an icon of your application, which is taken from the mipmap directory. So if you open your res directory and you go into your mipmap, you find these icons coming up over here. You double click it and you can see this icon. So this is one default icon which Android will provide you. In case you want your icons, you can put it into this and you can just rename this guy, right? So we got the label. Label is the name of the application which will be coming along with the icon. So when it says activity demo, but when you click on it, it says @string/app_name. So you go down to your values and strings.xml. So here you can see app_name coming up as activity demo. So guys, anytime if you want to change the name of your application, you can do so, right? For example, you can say Edureka demo app, right? So anytime you want to change this, you can change it. It's very easy. Now moving ahead from strings.xml, let's understand what is this round icon. So guys, some of the apps they're going to support the round icon. So we also have a provision for the round icon. So this is round in shape, right? If you can see. Then you got supports RTL. So guys, your app's gonna support the locales which are from right to left. For example, Arabic languages. Then you got the theme of your application. Now, what is meant by the theme of your application? So if I'm going to create any PowerPoint presentation, it might have some theme. So theme, to be precise, will have some colors, right? What are the different colors in your application? What's the color scheme of your app? That's like a very basic introduction to theme. So we got this theme known as app theme available in this styles.xml. Let's open styles.xml. In the styles.xml, you can find that we got something known as color primary dark, and color accent. There are three colors, right? So what are these three colors all about? So if you open down the layout file, you can see some blue color coming out here and some dark blue color coming out here, right? So where the Edureka demo app is written, we call it a toolbar, which is a color primary. And above where the Wi-Fi and the battery and the time is coming out, so we call it as a status bar, where the primary dark color is created. So over here in my styles.xml, these colors are taken from the colors.xml in the values directory out here. So color primary dark, and color accent. So guys, color accent is a kind of color for your, let's say, cursor. So what cursor and what focus will be of color. So it's like this color. So you want to change the color, just click on this and you can anytime change the color scheme of your application, right? So it's like very basic. So that's like your color primary, and primary dark should be exactly a bit more darker in tone. So that's how the toolbar should be. And color accent can be any color of your choice, right? So it can be any color of your choice. So typically I'm gonna take it like a bit red in color, let's say that. Now come back to your layout file once again. You can see the color scheme of your application is changed. The layout file was showing you some blue colors and now the colors are changed out here for us. So guys, very basic introduction, how you create an application and what the manifest file is all about, right? So manifest file will have lastly as an activity, right, which is your activity 1 within the package code.edureka.activity_demo. So activity 1 over here, if you can see, is your coming out to be as one Java file, where we said a set content view in a method like on create r.layout.activity_1. So guys, R stands for resource as of now. So r.layout.activity_1. So this is my layout. If you can see, this is my layout, r.layout.activity_1. And when you open this activity_1, it's the same layout file. So this has two views now. One is the design view, one is the text view. So when you open the text, you will find that it's all code written out here. If you can see out, so this is all code now. So it says some constraint layout having a text view, correct? So guys, you need not to worry about the source code. What you can do is you can just drag and drop the views as per your choice. You can just bring in some button out here, over here, and thereafter this button, it can be positioned from left, right, etc., here and there, right? So you can drag and drop the buttons anywhere and everywhere you want, right? So that's like your basic UI arrangement. So guys, I hope this layout is very easy to understand, and you can drag and drop the things, and in the code you can find that everything is coming out to you automatically, right? It's all automated for us. You need not to code. So a bit of coding can be done. For example, text view is hello world. You can say it's going to be activity 1, and you can just write down the text color goes like color primary dark, and you can say the text size goes like for example 20 dp. So the text of the button can be like submit, correct? And when you see the design part, so this is how the data is different now. The things changes now, right? So manifest file, so we are on to manifest file somehow. So this is the activity one, and I hope now the manifest structure is very clear, and this entire structure out here is open in front of you guys, right? So this is what every part of the project is more or less have something to link with your manifest itself, right? Gradle scripts contains one build.gradle over here, which is having the entire configuration to build your project. So what is the SDK version, what is your application version, what is the name of your apps version, what is the application ID, etc., etc. It is also having the SDK location for your Android. So Android Studio will download the SDK, right? So where you will have all the frameworks, all the APIs. So here you can see the SDK. We also have NDK, that's like native development kit. So in case you want to include some native library and you can use it in your project, so you can easily do so. So guys, this is one basic project structure for us. So how we can run this project? To run the project, you need to have an Android virtual device, right? So here we got AVD manager. So let's click on to the AVD manager. In the AVD manager part, you can create your virtual devices from here, right? So you need to choose one template. For example, you can choose Pixel and you can proceed and you can create one complete Android virtual device, right? So once you are done with a virtual device, you can just start it off. So creating a virtual device is very basic. It's just one wizard where you need to do certain steps. For example, choosing out to be what's the OS version which you want. You can download the images of different emulators or simulators. So let's start this Android emulator. And once you are done with your project structure, guys, right, you need to have an emulator or you need to connect one Android device with your computer via USB, right? So once it is done, you need to hit this green button out here, which is running your application. So when I give the command to run an application, Gradle again will come into action. So Gradle's gonna build the entire project. It's gonna compile and make one APK file which will be installed on your emulator or on your connected device. So guys, you just need to connect a device with your PC and it's gonna detect it. So sometimes, right, you need to download the drivers, and you should also enable the developer options in your settings, right? To do that, just Google it out. So let's wait for our emulator to turn on. So now the emulator is up. So let's unlock the emulator. So guys, this is again a very basic emulation of an Android device. Let's hit the run button and see what will happen. So it's gonna tell me that this is one connected device which I can find. We call it ADB, so Android Debug Bridge. So it's gonna detect what and all are connected devices. So let's hit the OK button. Since I'm gonna deploy it on my emulator out here, let's hit the OK. And now you can see the Gradle came into action. So Gradle build is running, right? So you can click to see what and all the tasks are being happening in the background if you want, right? So let's just wait for this Gradle build to get finished, and you will see one projection of your application in the emulator. So now it's saying that it's gonna index it and it's installing the APKs. If you can see the status change out here below over here, guys, it's installing the APKs, and now it's launching the activity. So here we are with one of the very beautiful sample application for you people, right? So we got an activity one and a button submit. Let's hit back and let's go to the application. So we got this application named as Edureka demo. If you can see, guys, over here. So it's Edureka demo out here. So this is your application. So in the manifest file, the activity main and launcher over here means that it's the first activity which is going to come up when you click on the icon, right? So guys, we got this activity as in main and launcher. That's why it is coming upon the click of your app icon, right? So when you click on the app icon, main and launcher should be the action and category of your activity. Let's now come back to the slides, right? So guys, I hope the structure of the project is clear. So once again, let's take on the manifest. So manifest file will provide all the essential information for our Android. So it's going to have a lot of things. We got action, activity, provider, receiver, services, uses permission. So if you want to come up with some internet permissions or accessing the memory, so you need to write this uses permission that we want to access the external storage or so. So this is what we got as a manifest file. So guys, now let's try to explore something known as life cycle of a component called activity. Activity is one user interface. We didn't create the object of activity. So if you see closely, if you will observe, I just created the class. I haven't written anywhere activity 1 AO assign new activity. We didn't do it anywhere. We didn't instantiate activity. So who's gonna instantiate activity? Android container is gonna instantiate the activity for us. So it's inversion of control which will be coming into the action, right? So let's now come back and try to see the life cycle of an activity. So guys, activities life cycle will have series of callbacks. So the first callback is known as onCreate. So whenever your activity will be launched, onCreate method will be executed. It's a kind of a constructor call now. After the onCreate, your activity will be started. So it's like onStart. So onStart is a method call when activity is pushed into the task. That's like a backstack. So what happens when you open a lot of activities? So we got something known as backstack or the task which gets created. So all the activities are pushed into this task. So after the start, you got resume. So resume is one function call where your activity is entirely visible to the user and user can interact with it, right? Now the activity is running, so user is interacting with the activity and he can do a lot of tasks in the UI part. But as soon as some other activity or some other component covers this activity, right? So this goes in the background, but it is partially visible. So the UI is partially visible, but user cannot interact. So the state of the activity goes like pause. So another activity is supposed to come on the foreground, but it is not covering the activity to the full. So you can see the below activity as in some inactive state. So that's like your pause state. So as the user again navigates back to the activity, so pause is linked with your resume, right? So if activity is paused, it can be re-resumed. And the stop is a state when the user is unable to see the activity and unable to interact with the activity. So if you are in a stop state, you will again go to the restart and then start and then again resume and so on and so forth. So guys, apps with the higher priority, they need more memory. So if there are applications which have higher priority to be executed, so they need more memory. So what happens? App processes can be killed, right? So activities whosoever are in stop state, they might be killed by the system. So you can again come back and get your activity recreated by the system itself if system destroys it. So guys, an activity can be destroyed by the system, or even you can by pressing the back key or by executing one API call called finish. So when your activities object is deleted from the memory, from the backstack, you got this call known as on destroy. So that's like our entire life cycle of an activity from launching till the shutdown, right? From creation till destruction. Let's try to write one program on the life cycle of an activity now. So guys, create is a state when activity is created. Resume is a state where activity is visible and running and the user is interacting with it. Stop is a state where user cannot see the activity and activity is covered by some other activity. So it's a background, so user cannot interact with the activity. Pause is a state where activity is visible but user cannot interact with the activity. It's like some other component has covered your activity but you can see the activity and you cannot interact with it. Destroy is a state where your activity is removed from the memory. Let's try to override each and every life cycle method of your activity and try to run the code and see how this life cycle callback will come into action, right? So let's see guys how the life cycle methods for your activity can be described. Now what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to put one log. So log is like one clear textual statement which will be printed out here in Android monitor. So we're gonna do the logging process. If you are already aware of logging, it's pretty good. So as of now, you can treat like a CISO statement, which I'm going to put it over my Android monitor. So if you are aware of log4j, it makes perfect sense. So logging in Android, so here you need to give one key, right? So for key, I will just say string tag as in your activity1, right? So here we are. The tag goes like activity1, and here you say tag comma on create, so that whenever my activity1 will be created, its on create will come into account. So we got an on create method, right? So on create method, we gonna get this tag that's like on create, and after the on create, I'm going to override certain more methods. Let's see that. So you got on start, then I got on resume. Let's also try to override restart. You got on resume, on pause, then you got on stop, and finally I got something known as on destroy. So let's put this log statement in every lifecycle callback method, and thereafter we'll try to execute the code, and we'll see one significant difference. So when is called when, so we'll see that, guys. Let me just do one change. All right, so we are close to that now. Good to go. So we got create, start, restart, resume, pause, stop, and destroy. So let's run the code and now see when these lifecycle callbacks will come into action. So guys, this is the Android monitor out here. I'm going to open it, right? And I'm going to write this activity1 as in filter, right? So I'm going to write this activity1 as in filter. That's like my tag. So now you can see we got create, start, resume. It means activities first of all created, then started, and then resumed. Now when you hit the back button, let's hit the back button directly. So when you hit the back button, your activity is paused and then stopped and then destroyed. So what does this mean now? It means that there is a sequence of lifecycle callbacks which are supposed to come into the action. Create, start, resume. If you press the back key directly, it's gonna go to the destroy, but before it is destroyed, it gets stopped. Before it gets stopped, it is paused. Let's reopen. So you again got create, start, resume. Let's press the home button out here, if you can see in the middle, right? So it's in the resume state. You press the home button and some other guy came on top of this guy. So your activity went from resume state to the stop state. So before it goes to the stop state, it is going in the pause state, right? So from resume, it went to the pause and then to the stop. Let's try to bring back our application. So here we are. So from your stop state, it restarted and then it again started and again it is resumed. So these are couple of, you can say, instances, or you can say scenarios where we are able to understand the life cycle of an activity. But guys, activities life cycle is vast now. There can be various other scenarios where this life cycle of activity can come into account, right? So we got create, start, resume, pause, stop, and destroy as in the major life cycle callbacks of your activity. All right, so let's slide down the presentation now, guys. So the next part over here is what are the various layouts in Android. So when we are particularly talking about the layouts, so we got various layouts in Android, right? And we need these layouts so that we can align the views over here. So what we got views in our Android applications in the activities with which the users will interact, correct? So activity is just one frame or a container, and the layout file is going to act as an arrangement of the views. So we got different arrangements in which you can process your views, and the layouts can be created in two different ways. One is you write an XML. So again, inversion of control comes into account here. So here layouts can be defined in XMLs, and we can present these layouts in our layout directory in the application folder, right? So we saw that. Let's try to see it once again. So in the layout directory, you can create your layouts over here. So we can also create the layout files at runtime. I mean layouts at runtime. So you can create it programmatically. So whatsoever can be done in XMLs can also be done in programs. Now, what are the various types of layouts? So guys, the answer is there are n number of layouts, but what are the major layouts if you can see? So we got linear layout, we got relative layout, recycler view, list view, and grid view, right? So these are the majorly used layouts in Android. Relative layout is now kind of an obsolete layout, and we got constraint layout as the new layout these days, right? So relative layout is replaced by constraint layout. So let's see what these layouts are all about, right? So let's try to understand the layouts one by one and see what and all they can do for us. So guys, I will be demonstrating linear and a constraint layout for you people, right? But recycler, list view, and grid views, they're gonna work with something known as adapters. So let's try to understand the very first layout as a linear layout, or I'll explain the first layout as a constraint layout, which is a replacement to the relative layout. So let's see that part. So guys, the root element, if you can see, is a constraint layout over here. So what happens in the constraint layout? In the constraint layout, you can position the views as per your choice wherever you want. So one view will be, a constraint from the 4 directions, right? Left, right, up, and down. So it's very much in line to what we got as an iOS app. So if you are an iOS app developer, you can get it very easily. So what's basically a constraint is, so you're putting out the constraints so that for different dimensions of the screen, everything remains intact, correct? Now let's drag and drop one more button out here. So when I have dragged the button, so where exactly you want this button to be available, right? So this button has nothing linked here and there, but this button is having some linkage. Let's say that this button out here is linked from the top and the bottom, left and the right. So now this guy is having nothing to do with these two views. So one is the text view, another one is this button, right? So it has nothing to do with these. But at the same time, if you take this and you try to match it to this guy, so now this guy is in constraint of this guy over here. So this management goes a bit different now. So we can actually very beautifully design your views in a simplest manner. So who goes where and how with the help of constraints. So in the background, these constraints which are being created, if you can see these constraints, right? So they are done automatically for us and we need not to worry for them, right? So that's like a very basic layout known as a constraint layout. Then the other kind of layout which we have is known as a linear layout. So guys, linear layout is a layout where we got all the views either in a vertical direction or in a horizontal direction. So linear layout, we're gonna place the views linearly or sequentially one after the other. Let's see how this linear layout is gonna work. So what I'm going to do in my project out here, so in this resource directory, in the layout directory, let's do a right click and let's create one new layout resource file. So I'm going to say it is activity_1_linear. So by default, the root element is the linear layout. If you can see out here, you say okay. So here we are with the linear layout. So it's basically now having one root element as linear layout with the orientation as vertical and width and height as some match parent. It means cover the entire frame, right? So by default, the orientation is vertical out here. What I can do, I can drag and drop the views now. So for example, I am going to drag a button. So here the button is dragged, right? So it is going to take the width as match parent, but I can do a wrap of content where this width can be managed out here. So let's try to name it as button 1. Now the next button, if you are going to drag, you can see it is being dragged below the button 1, not exactly out here, because it is linear arrangement and it is in the vertical direction, right? So the other view, for example, checkbox, other view, radio button. So every view is being placed one after the other, right? So we call this arrangement as a linear arrangement. What I can do, I can also create one linear layout within a linear layout, right? So let's say a linear layout. So width is like match parent, height is like wrap content. So we can have nesting of layouts now. So guys, nesting of layout is like you got a layout and you're gonna put a layout within some other layout. Now what we are going to do over here, let's come down and let's try to write some button. So width goes like wrap content and height goes like again wrap content, and the text of this guy goes like btn1. All right, so it can be any name of your choice. And the orientation of this linear layout I'm going to set now as horizontal. So if a linear layout is having a horizontal orientation, whatever the components or the views you are going to add in your layout, they will be now aligned in a horizontal direction. So the overall layout is a linear layout, but we got one nested layout with the orientation as horizontal. So guys, I hope this makes a sense now, right? Where we can create nesting of layouts and we can either have horizontal or the vertical arrangement. So linear layout is most suitable when you're going to write a registration UI. Let's say I want to register as a user with different details, right? So you can come up with a linear layout because here the things are supposed to be linearly arranged. Let's come back now and now try to understand the next part, which is your relative layout. So guys, the best way of relative, now the relative layout is a bit, kind of old, or you can say an obsolete layout. So the newer one is the constraint layout, which is a replacement to the relative layout. But let's try to understand how relative layout works. So in relative layout, you can place the views relatively to some other view, right? So let's see how we can do. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to say one more layout out here, and let's try to say this is activity underscore one underscore relative, and here the root element is coming out to be relative linear layout. Let us change it to relative layout and let's say okay. So what we can see that the root element is now a relative layout. So what happens in the relative layout? So if you are going to design the relative layout, drag and drop a view wherever you like. So it's pretty much like your constraint layout, but here one view is relatively placed, if you can see out here. So it's basically positioned. So this button is relative of this button. If you open out the text now, so they have linkings. So for example, the button ID is 6, right? So let's say the text is 1 and this text is 2. So button 2 is placed below this guy. So it's a relationship. So child siblings are relationship more or less. Let's try to drag and drop some toggle button. So toggle button out here, if you can see, it's again basically aligned with some button. So what is happening over here, guys? So views are always positioned here with respect to the other views. Correct? Drag and drop, place the views here and there wherever you want. That's like your relative layout. Let's slide down the presentation now. So guys, other than relative layout, we got a list view. So list view is one layout which will display the data in some, you can say, scrollable form in a linear arrangement. So list item is the one over here in the list view. So just like your WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is a list view. So all the items in the WhatsApp are referred to as list items. So we need a design pattern. So for that, Google has already given us a class known as adapter, like an array adapter or a base adapter or a simple cursor adapter. So list view works with the adapters. So adapters are the one which are the design patterns which contains the data, and they help to bind the data on the list view. So likewise, list view, if you want to come up with some grid arrangement, we got a grid view. So guys, grid view is also one layout which is scrollable, but here the list items are replaced with the grid items. So we got rows and columns over here, and this also is one of the most useful layouts in our applications. For example, if you want to come up with a gallery, so the images are supposed to be a grid view, they are not supposed to be a list view, right? So it led developers to add widgets in the grid. So you can create some dashboard kind of a UI for your activity, right? And you can put some different options out here. So we got out of the box support for scrolling. So we need not to worry about the scroll views over here. And it's gonna use the same adapter which is used in your list view. So guys, finally we got something known as recycler view. So recycler view was launched in the lollipop version of Android, and it is also having a backport support. So what's recycler view all about? We got a flexibility in the recycler view known as a layout manager. So layout manager can dynamically switch the view of the recycler view either to a linear layout or to relative layout or to a staggered layout. So it means what? Either you can dynamically change the views into relative, into linear, into grid, or into your staggered. So let's take one example out here. So if you're going to search in the Amazon, right? So there they will give you one view switching option. So either you want to see all the items in the grid arrangement or in the list arrangement. So that's like the recycle view is going to help us. Other than that, it's very much optimized on the memory level, right? So that's like your recycler. So guys, let's try to now see. So these are various layouts now, right? So how you can access your view in your Java code, right? So we need to come up and access a view in a Java. Let's see how we can do that. So in my activity out here, so I got the layout file, which is mapped to my Java code. So this goes like your activity_1, right? So guys, this is your layout file, activity_1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create one function. Let's say public, and let's say a void, and I'm going to say click handler with a view. Let's say view and a view, right? So we got a public void click handler, and you got a view and a view. So guys, here I will just put one simple toast. You say toast dot make text this comma you clicked button, and then say length long dot show. So this is one small message which will appear, and then it will automatically go off, right? So it's gonna come up for some longer duration of time. Now come back to your layout file. So within this, I got this guy button submit. So you say on click of this button, call the method click handler, right? So let's run the code now and see what happens. So it says installing the APKs, launching the activity. So click on the submit button, guys. Out here you can see you clicked button. Now this is the toast which is coming out for us, right? So it's coming in and it's going off. So that's what you coded out over here, right? So if you can see, let's now see how you can use a text view in your Java code, right? So here we got this guy known as text view, right? So we need to see how we can use this text view in your Java code. Let's see that. So let's come down here. Let's write one text view, as in one text view. So if you can see, right? So I got one reference to this class known as text view. So it's imported for us, if you can see out here. So guys, what I am going to do over here, let's come back to this activity_1. We got one text view with the ID over here, if you can see. So the ID is particularly this guy known as text view over here. This is the ID. So in my layout file, I got an ID, and in my on create, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say text view out here, right, is basically find view by ID. You say find view by ID r dot ID dot text view, and whatever the view you have located, it's basically supposed to be downcasted to the text view. So guys, in my on create, I initialized one view, and now I can use it, right? So on click of my button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say text view dot set the text, right? And you can say this is awesome. Or let's try to say, let's come up with one date, right? So you say date, and for the date, let's try to come up as in one date, right? So I got one java.util.date API, and here I'm gonna say today is plus date.toString, right? Let's do one very basic code over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to display what is today on my text view. Let's see that part now. Let's try to run the code and see what happens. Alright guys, so if you can see now, you click on the submit button. So it says today is Saturday, June 10, and it's gonna show us the time, right? And thereafter, this whole information when you click on the button. As of now, what we have seen is how we can create one basic simple application, right? Where we got one complete project structure out here, right? And in the project structure, we saw that what exactly is this complete project structure and the Gradle scripts, right? We also did try to see how we can create an activity and how we can manage its life cycle. And we explored a bit of layouts and saw that how we can use the views within the layouts into our code. So guys, there can be n number of, let's see that, and n number of layouts. So we got something known as a view group, which is one class in Android, right? So written in Java. So view group is one class where we got linear layout as its child, we got relative layout as its child, and many more layouts, right? So all the layouts. We got something known as view. So for the view, I got views like button, then radio button, checkbox, then we got something known as edit text, where you can punch in the data, and many more, right? So layouts shall contain the views. That's how we're gonna work on the layouts part. There are various layouts which works with the adapters. For example, you got your list view, grid view, and recycler view, right? So we got various layouts which work with the adapter. Let's see one very basic example on how we can write one list view. So I'm going to say, let's come to the layout part and say right click and say a new layout resource file, and I'm going to say this is my activity underscore one underscore list view. So let's take the root element as list view. So here you can see the list items coming into the action, right? So the textual part is very basic, where you got this list item. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep one ID to this guy. So let's say @ID, and let's say list view. So this is my list views ID. I can also write some padding, which is like the fair margin. So let's put like some 16 dp out here. Now in my source code, let's try to use this list view. So let's come down, and here I'm going to change my layout as activity underscore one underscore list view, right? So let's comment out all these guys, not this, so text view, and let's try to comment out this click handler. So I will do a very basic demonstration on list view, right? So you say a list view as in a list view. The way you got your text view initialized, you say list view, your list view, then you say find the view by id r.id list view, right? So guys, list view, grid view, or recycler view, they're gonna work with the adapters. So typically I'm going to write one array adapter out here of type string. Now these adapters can be customized, right? So as of now I'm taking one predefined adapter, so adapters can be customized to create a custom list view. So how I'm going to come up with my adapter, I'm gonna say adapter as in a new array adapter. So guys, array adapters, they can take some inputs, right? The first input which I'm going to pass is this, and second is my layout file android.r.layout.simple list item 1. Now what does this mean now over here? So guys, this is one predefined layout which works with the array adapter, right? And what you can do, you can just now add the data into this adapter. So you can say add, for example, I'm going to now create a list view of various let's say shopping carts, right? So let's start with Amazon. So thereafter I'm gonna come up with Flipkart, let's say Snapdeal, let's say Myntra, then we got eBay, right? So these are some of the items which I have added into my adapter. So these items will be displayed within this layout, which is a predefined layout now. So what I will do now, I will just say list view dot set the adapter to be adapter. Now it's as simple as to use a list view, right? So let's run the code and understand how this list view is gonna come up. So here we are with one of the very beautiful concept out here, if you can see, guys, right? So we got Amazon, Flipkart, Snapdeal, Myntra, eBay, etc., etc. So there might be a situation you feel like clicking on it, right? So you feel like clicking on it. So what you can do, you can put an click listener out here. So you can say your activity is gonna implement on item click listener, right? So you can come up with an item click listener, and here you are with the method known as on item click, and on the list view here you can just say list view dot set on item click listener to be the current class, right? Current object. So in my on item click, just extract the item on which you selected from your adapter. You say adapter dot get the item at position number I. So whatever the position will be available in the I. Now what I will do, I will just toast the item which you are going to click, right? So you selected plus your item. Let's rerun the code now and see what happens. All right, guys. So here we are. You click on Amazon, so it says you selected Amazon. You clicked on eBay, so it says you selected eBay. So moving ahead now. So let's say you want to come up, on list item click, you want to just initiate some new activity. So what I'll do, I'll come down in my app, in my Java, I will just do a right click over here, and I will do a right click, and I'll say a new, and I'll say an activity, and I'll again say an empty activity, right? So I'm intentionally coming up with empty activity again. So let's try to name this new activity as activity 2 and say finish. So guys, we'll get both the things now. So the activity, along with the activity, you got its layout file. So it's again a constraint layout. So in my design part, so let's try to say one text view out here. So I'm gonna put some constraints on my text view. Next part, I'll just say this is your activity 2, and you can just come up with some text size of 20 dp. So we got one more activity in our application. At the same time, the manifest file will have a registration for your activity 2, if you can see over here. So we got only one guy, main and launcher. So the other guy is just a basic activity. In my activity 1, what I am going to do, on click of any item, I'm going to launch my activity 2. So how I will do that, guys? So there is one concept, one fundamental, one API called intent. You say intent as in a new intent. So source has to be your activity 1. So I say it's like activity 1 dot this, and then you say you wanna land up to activity 2 dot class, right? And then you say start the activity with the intent. So this is how you wanna navigate from one activity to other. So navigate from A1 to A2, right? And when you're gonna navigate, so you're gonna navigate it in a way that we are going to click on some item, and then we are going to navigate after the toast is displayed. Let's run the final code and see what's gonna happen. So all in all, one basic introduction to some of the fundamentals from where you can start building your applications, or you can start, ramping up yourself on Android, guys. So here we are, guys. So let's try to click on Myntra. So you can see that you have navigated to your activity 2. Correct? Come back. So this is your activity 1. So click on any item. So you'll be navigated to your activity 2. So let's slide down the presentation. So guys, that's gonna be all from our side. We hope that you have enjoyed the session. So once again, this is Ishant Kumar on behalf of Edureka. I hope you have enjoyed the session. So guys, do like us, do comments, do put your feedbacks and reviews. So thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a great day. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!